My name is Victor Fuhrman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. According to the CDC's National Center for Health Statistics, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, an average 145 million Americans visited a hospital emergency room annually. That accounts for approximately 45% of the U.S. population. What is that experience like? For those of us who have visited an ER, we know full well that it's not the way it's been depicted in television drama. What's it like for the dedicated doctors, physician's assistants, nurses, and other ER personnel who take on the herculean task of providing treatment, comfort, and care to those needing their services and their families? What does it feel like to hold someone's life in the balance? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Dr. Shannon Sovndal, knows full well what this feels like. A board-certified doctor in both emergency medicine and emergency medical services, Dr. Sovndal serves as a physician and medical director for multiple EMS agencies and fire departments. Dr. Sovndal has a wide range of career experience working in tactical medicine with the FBI, as a team doctor for the Garmin professional cycling team, and as a flight physician. He's the producer of the podcast Match on Fire, Medicine and More, and the founder of 300 Training Group, which focuses on educating and training pre-hospital providers. His website is drsovndal.com. That's drsovndal, SOVNDAL.com. And he joins me this week to share his experiences and discuss his just published book, Fragile, Beauty in Chaos, Grace in Tragedy, and the Hope That Lives in Between. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Dr. Shannon Sovndal. Welcome, Dr. Sovndal.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And thank you so much for your service to others on so many levels. It's an honor to have you with us this evening.
I'm glad to be here.
Now, when we welcome guests to Destination Unlimited for the first time, we ask them to share their early life, how it led to their path. Did you always aspire to medicine?
No, not at all. I don't have any physicians in my family. Really, since a very early age, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I wanted to be a fighter pilot, not just like every kid wanted to be a fighter pilot. I was really determined to be a fighter pilot. And I ended up focusing in on that goal very early on, and I ended up going to the Air Force Academy to be a fighter pilot. That was my plan.
And what happened?
I lost my pilot qualifications, so it was a real big learning experience that you don't always get what you want. At the time, my vision went bad, and I thought I could wing it and not have to worry about it. But obviously, they keep testing your eyes when you're there, and I wouldn't have qualified to fly at the time, and I was kind of mentally broken from that. And so I'd been so focused in on this goal that I just became devastated. And I left the academy. I quit, and I use that word because I fought with it for a really long time, and it's bothered me. And I kind of just floated about, meaning I didn't know what I was going to do because my goal had been taken away.
And then what happened after that?
So I went to UC Davis undergrad, and I'm from California, and I was initially an aeronautical engineer at the Air Force Academy. And when I came to Davis, I just didn't want to think about it really, so I majored in economics. Not because I thought I wanted to work in economics. I just found the subject interesting, and I kind of didn't have an end goal, meaning I didn't know what I was going to do when I finished college.
And how did you get into medicine?
I took a class in our outreach school during the summer to be an EMT because I thought it would be a good skill set to know. I was very active outdoors. And then I thought it would be a good job in the summer, meaning working on an ambulance seemed like a better job to me than, working in a restaurant or something. And so I took that EMT class and started to work on an ambulance. And while I was working on the ambulance, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed, people calling for help, and you would go to the rescue and you would get to do this care. And it was kind of addictive almost that you got this rush of doing the work.
And so you went to medical school at Columbia?
Yep. And so I actually segued. I wasn't even sure at that point I was going to be a doctor, and I got really into bike racing, which will tie in, later when we talk about, what jobs I've had when I worked for the professional cycling team. But I got really into racing bicycles, and I took time off from school to do that. And, I met a lot of very good bike racers, and it was through bike racing actually that I got put towards medicine, because my cycling coach was a physician, and, he was training me with the physiology, and I'd love to talk about the physiology. And my roommate at the time said, you should go to med school. You like being an EMT on an ambulance, and you like physiology. So that's a done deal. And I kind of was riding my bike one day and said, yeah, I'm going to be a doctor. And ended up going to med school. So there was no great plan or moment really to do it. It was kind of, yeah, that does make sense. I think I'll go to med school. I know that sounds funny when I say it, but it's true.
Sometimes I personally found in life that our path as we see it in the beginning, especially when we're younger, doesn't necessarily match up with what the divine or God has in plan for us, and that things change. And
yeah, for sure.
What we think of it, our calling, really turns out not to be our calling.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, obviously, a big part of what you just said is, I discussed that in Fragile, because when we think we have a plan, we think we can be in control, but really we can't, and we can't even see the vision of the future, as we're moving forward. And students now, young aspiring doctors always come to me and say, well, what should I do to get into med school? And what I tell them is you should do what your passion is. You should do the things that you like to do. Don't try to tick a box off for somebody else. And the reason for that is because it guides you to your true pathway, and it guides you to your true passion ultimately as a job. There's no one that would have said going to the Air Force Academy, dropping out, racing bikes is going to get you into Columbia Med School. Like, there's just no way that would have been in the cards. But it happened in that, that made an interesting story. And when I would go to interviews or I would do things, we would talk about bike racing, in the interview. We wouldn't talk about what research I had done or something doctorally. We talked about kind of who I was as a person. And I think, that's just good advice, that you don't know the future, but you just really need to live, each moment to its fullest.
Absolutely. Now, you had many choices after graduating med school. You could have become a neurosurgeon. You could have become a general surgeon, an internist. Why did you choose emergency medicine?
Well, my first exposure to medicine was on the ambulance, and I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the fact that, people say, well, emergency doctors, what are you a specialist at? You're not a specialist of the heart or the brain or the, tonsils. Like, that's not your thing. Really, what an emergency medicine doctor is, their specialty is handling anything that comes through the door in a crisis situation. That is my specialty. So, when you walk into that ER with your heart attack or with your toothache or with your appendicitis, in the middle of the night, I'm the one that's there that has to deal with that. And so it really appealed to me because I got to kind of practice all aspects of medicine. And then I also definitely like the excitement of it, so to speak. I don't feel like I get excited, but I like that I don't know what's coming into the door. I like that at any moment there can be a crisis and we have to step up. And I do always refer to Isaiah 6:8 with that. It kind of gives you the sense that when they say, who will step up to this crisis? ER doctors raise their hand. They'll say, I'll do it. Send me. I'll do it.
Absolutely. So you arrived for your internship in emergency medicine. What were your expectations, and how did they compare to the realities?
I mean, I think this is a problem for a lot of people, and certainly for me. You have a romantic view, and then there's a realistic view. And it's embarrassing when I look back at how much of a romantic view I had of it. When you would say, obviously, it's not like Grey's Anatomy on TV. You would think that I understood that, but I kind of really didn't. And it might have been just that I was still young, but, I went there expecting to be kind of, in the heat of this battle, saving lives. You don't really think about the nitty gritty of what they're expecting you to do. And you don't really think about how it affects you to try to take on that much information. I mean, becoming a physician is truly like drinking from a fire hose. The speed at which you go through med school and then residency just picks it up of what you're expected to know and do. It's daunting and it's scary, to be honest.
And then you arrive for your internship and you actually have to practice it.
Yeah. And I remember, my first rotation was in the ICU when I was in my internship, and I sat down at the desk and, was getting overwhelmed by the amount of information. And towards the end of rounds, everyone started handing me their pagers. So each team on the group, there's about 7 teams, had a pager, and they all started handing it to me because they're like, you're on call tonight. So one, I didn't even know that I was on call, my first day. And 2, I was expected to take care of all these patients. And I had just literally gotten done with medical school. And these were pretty sick patients. And I remember sitting there just trying to breathe in and breathe out and calm myself, because I was like, I am going to get somebody killed. Like, this is not a good situation.
So you literally had a baptism by fire.
Yeah, it was definitely scary, and I laugh when I think about it now, because, all those pagers on your belt, you have, 8 pagers on, and you forget that you have that on. So the first time you go to the bathroom, you pull your drawstring on your scrub pants and everything just drops. You have to go to the IT department and say, hey, I lost 4 pagers in the bathroom. I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's kind of, it's funny, because not only am I not even handling with patients, I can't even do the logistics of, where am I supposed to go in the hospital? How am I supposed to manage all these pagers? Who do I call? It was definitely a lot of expectation.
Well, obviously, you've mastered it, and I believe there are thousands of patients who are grateful that you did. My guest this week, Dr. Shannon Sovndal. He's the author of the new book, Fragile: Beauty in Chaos, Grace in Tragedy, and the Hope That Lives in Between. We'll be back with more of Dr. Sovndal after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living, a chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me, and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
A social distancing tip.
Keeping your distance from others is important in slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are some fun things to do alone. Read a book, take a walk, unpack your suitcase from that trip you took last September, paint a self-portrait, catch up on a TV series, do a puzzle. Remember, we should all stay home to lower the risk for everyone. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
During these times of worry, fear, and uncertainty, a calming and soothing voice may help you relax, clear your mind, and help you sleep. This is Victor the Voice Fuhrman, and for the first time, I'm offering my voice for your well-being. I will craft a personal guided meditation to suit your needs. My fees are very reasonable, and I can provide your personalized guided meditation quickly. For more information, please send an email to voice@victorthevoice.com. That's voice@victorthevoice.com. Blessings, my friend. Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Dr. Shannon Sovndal. He's the author of the new book, Fragile: Beauty in Chaos, Grace in Tragedy, and the Hope That Lives in Between. What was your first experience with losing a patient like?
I mean, I think that goes back to what we were talking about with the romantic view and the realistic view. And really, it's the beginning of the foundation of Fragile, the book. Fragile is about me trying to figure out how to cope with seeing this emotion, seeing how life can change in a literal heartbeat. Things can be fine, and then they're not. And, that knowledge base of how do you live with kind of this ever-present knowledge that things like this can happen, and they do happen on a regular basis. And I'm reminded of it over and over again. And, you know, I get invited into the kind of the very, you know, individualized relationship of a family, because when a loved one dies, the doctor's there and you get to see this experience of emotion. And it was quite overwhelming. And, you know, the first time that I had a patient die, it's almost like everybody else in the hospital is going about their business, and you're standing there wanting a timeout to say, hey, you know, this is an actual person that I was just, you know, doing CPR on or doing something to, and now we just stopped, and everyone goes about their business, washes their hands, takes a new phone call, and it's a very surreal experience.
We're going to talk about faith and grief a little bit later on in the interview, but what was it like talking to that first family?
I mean, I think early on, what I always say, that the hard part is that you wouldn't expect. The hard part is that, you know, I need to have a distance from them, because I actually still need to go do my job. So if you're working in the emergency department, you know, there's still patients checking in, there's still new patients to see. So even though you would love to sit and talk for an extended period of time with a family who just lost a loved one, because that's definitely what they deserve, you know, you might be the only doctor that's working, so you need to go back in there. And it's an odd sensation, because you really do need to keep your protection on. You know, it's like you put a shield on to say, I'm not going to let myself totally into the emotion, because I need to keep working. And that is a weird struggle, because when you come home and everything gets quiet and you're by yourself at night, it definitely comes out. You know, you're taken aback by the fact that you lost the patient, that you had this emotion, that you hid the emotion, and now you're by yourself. And, you know, again, that was part of that struggle of what brought about Fragile, is me walking down the hallway of a hospital and being like, you know, I just want to sit down in the middle of the hallway and cry, but I need to keep working.
Absolutely. You begin each chapter in Fragile with a popular song title. I noticed that you had Lunatic Fringe by Red Ryder, and you had Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden, and So Alive by the Goo Goo Dolls. Why this choice and the association with music?
I think, for one, you know, music really moves me, and it's part of that being in the moment. You know, the emotion, the nostalgia, the stuff that music can do to you, how it can make you happy or reflect. You know, it's just so moving, and I really kind of geek out on music. Meaning, I love to listen to, you know, all the parts of the music, and you know, I had worked in a music studio, and I kind of got to watch producers do that when I was in college early on, and it's just a really nice appreciation. And so when I hear songs as I'm thinking through Fragile, or when I was writing the book, I was like, this really applies to what I'm trying to say in this chapter. And so the songs do coincide with the chapter, meaning it might be the way the song makes me feel, or it might be the lyrics of the song. But I really did find a connection with that. And oftentimes I would listen to that song while I was writing the chapter, because it put me in, you know, an emotional state. When you write a book that is like this, you know, I mean, it's heavy at times. At times, you know, I'm really happy writing, and at times I'm getting really sad writing, because I'm remembering a story that moved me. And, you know, the music helped bring me into that. I actually, at the beginning, was going to put quotes of the lyric that I wanted, but, you know, quickly realized that would cost me a lot of lawyer time in trying to get approval from these very famous bands to use their quotes in my book.
Absolutely. You and I share this in common. My life is punctuated, so many aspects of my life, by songs that I associate with those times and the lyrics, and I have them in my heart, and I understand totally what you're talking about. You share that you talk about staying calm in chaos. What techniques would you share with other medical personnel and first responders for staying focused and calm in stressful situations?
Well, I think early on, you know, you asked me about right when I started and seeing, you know, traumatic patients and how did that affect you. You know, I used to, when you started this, you get amped up. You know, you would have a patient that was dying and you would start to get fast heart rate and you'd be sweating. And, you know, I had an instructor tell me that, like, hey, they put their hand on my shoulder and said, you know, it's not your emergency. It's their emergency. You're fine. You're just going to take care of their emergency. And I think that really stuck with me over time, and that I tried to perfect the fact that, hey, you know, I'm here to do my job, and I need to train to do my job. And so one, how do you stay calm? It's being good at what you do. So I think, you know, I always say there's 3 pillars of excellence for really everybody. The first is, you know, book smarts. You need to have a knowledge base. And then you need to have, number 2, technical skills. You need to be able to do whatever it is that your job is. And number 3, you need to have situational control. And so over time, you know, I would spent a lot of effort on all three of those things, getting a good knowledge base so I knew what was going on, being really proficient at the skills I have to do, like intubation or, chest tubes and things like that. And then the last one is the hardest one, which comes over time and experience, is that you gain situational control. You can keep the others around you calm when everything is going sideways. And I think for me, how I do that even presently is I just focus on my breathing for a moment. I just focus on breathing in, breathing out. Then I kind of address what I have to do, meaning like I think of them as roads when I'm taking care of a sick patient. What is my next task on my diagnostic pathway? What is my next task on my treatment pathway? And what is my next task on my treating their symptoms pathway? And I actually focus in on those things because it hones me in and lets me be calm and slows my mind down.
With the breathing, have you practiced yoga?
I haven't. It's funny because people would think it's the opposite, but I don't think it is. I'm addicted to jiu-jitsu, so I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu is a wrestling art. And the thing that's so great about jiu-jitsu is first, it's super hard, so you have a really hard cardio load. But at the same time, it's a chess match. So while you're having a difficulty breathing, you also have to be very strategic, and you have to think about what you're doing in order to not lose. And then the third piece of that is that you know whether you won or lost. There's no hiding. There's no excuse when I tap doing jiu-jitsu because someone's choking me. I can't say, oh, hey, you just lucked out. No, I mean, they got me. And so I think that breathing control, though, does apply to what I do in the ER because you have to calm yourself when you're feeling like you can't get a breath in because someone's trying to choke you or sit on top of you. You have to calm your mind because it can start to panic and run away from you. And so you calm your mind. You can do that through controlling your breathing, and that can bring you back into the space.
Speaking of calming your mind, with the challenges of the current pandemic, things must be more difficult than ever for medical personnel and first responders. What advice would you offer for those struggling with burnout and exhaustion?
I mean, I think the main thing is that you need to make sure that you have your release. So that release can be different for every person. For example, a couple things. The first is I think that it's really key that you have close friends and family. I can talk to my wife and tell her what I'm feeling. You don't want to pen that up inside. I can't hold all this emotion inside my soul and not expect that it's going to come out some way. And so I want to control how it comes out, and I can do that by talking to people that I care about. The other key, I think, is talking to people that do what you do. So it's helpful for me to talk to my wife and friends, but it's also really helpful for me to talk to good doctor colleagues I have, and we can be honest about what we're feeling with that. And then the next thing is that release. So don't forget to go try to have a good time, whatever it is for you, whether it's going on a run, mountain biking, playing the guitar, playing the piano. You need to find that thing that lets you get away from it and lets you kind of rejuvenate.
My wife and I both served as chaplains for the Red Cross here in New York after 9/11, and after each shift of chaplaincy, we would have what they called a diffusing session where we'd all sit together and share our experiences and support one another. Do doctors do the same thing?
No, and it's extremely unfortunate, and I actually talk about it in the book a bit. When firefighters fight a fire as well, or there's a big incident on scene for EMS providers, they do take a time out and they do a debrief. They do an after-action report, and they kind of get what went right, what went wrong, how does everyone feel about that. And physicians, we do quality assurance, meaning we monitor charting and how the outcomes of the cases, but we really don't get together in groups and say, hey, let's debrief from the stress that we just had. And part of that is what I was saying earlier. I work in a hospital where oftentimes I could be the only physician. I'll have other staff there, but there's not an option to say, hey, this child dying really upsets you. Go take an hour break and come back. That's not an option for that. So it is very tricky and challenging. And I think in part from that, it does lead to increased exhaustion and increased burnout.
And as is in the case with war, there is a potential for PTSD among medical personnel and first responders waging the war against COVID-19 nationwide. What may hospitals and EMS do to reduce the triggers of PTSD?
Well, I think this is a real concern. We already know that healthcare providers and ER physicians specifically have an extremely high rate of depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And they have a high rate of suicide. And I think that is from all of this stress from burnout and kind of holding it inside and needing to act strong. You can't let it out. And so I do think that hospitals and, EMS agencies and all of those things need to take an active role in saying, hey, we really need to worry about our care providers, especially moving forward in the next 6 months, checking in with them, having access to groups to talk to, having anonymous hotlines and things like that, people to talk to. I mean, I know physicians are very concerned about the stigma. If I ask for help, that's a problem. And so I think breaking those barriers down, those walls down, so that we can try to eliminate some of this. A pandemic is stressful. It's not something that we, experience on a regular basis. And, we have real concern that 6 months from now, a year from now, a lot of our people who are on the front lines are going to be suffering from this and need help.
And I think there's going to be a lot of civilians also in the same boat because of the generational trauma that everyone's experienced. We've never experienced anything like this in our history.
Yeah, it's crazy time.
Absolutely. My guest, Dr. Shannon Sovndal. He's the author of the new book, Fragile, Beauty in Chaos, Grace in Tragedy, and the Hope That Lives in Between. Dr. Sovndal, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Yeah, so you can log into my website. It has access to the podcast, to the book. That's at www.drsovndal.com. So that's DRSOVNDAL.com. The book's available on the major retailers online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you type in Fragile and Beauty or Fragile in my name, it'll pop up there for you.
And we'll be back with more of Dr. Sovndal and Fragile after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
The student asks the teacher, "How do I experience transformation?" The teacher replies, "When the student is ready to receive deeper answers, the student then asks, 'How do I know what deeper questions to ask?' And the teacher replies, "When the student decides to commit to a practice inviting transformation, Level 2 questions will be revealed." Hi, I'm Tomas Garza, and as a teacher and host, I'm inviting listeners to enroll in the mastery of transformation by joining me on Decide to Transform, your bridge to Level 2 answers. Tuesdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. That's right. They can help save lives by simply washing their hands. Just 20 seconds of thorough hand washing after they've coughed or sneezed or been outside can help fight against the dastardly spread of germs. Armed with only soap and water and hands, your superhero can protect you, your family, and everyone out there in America land. Amazing! Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Dr. Shannon Sovndal. He's the author of Fragile, Beauty in Chaos, Grace in Tragedy, and the Hope That Lives in Between. Dr. Sovndal, what steps are you taking as an EMS medical director to make sure that your staff does not spread or catch COVID-19?
Yeah, this was a big time sink for us when this started. You know, when we started to see these cases of COVID spreading to the United States, and then we saw what was happening in New York, we really were concerned about how that would affect our healthcare system overall, but particularly the 911 service, because that's what I'm responsible for. So, we were afraid that we would potentially lose 40% of our workforce, meaning when you called 911, there would be no one there to come and help. And so we pretty early on started to put pretty aggressive measures in on how to protect them. And early on, I think that they were a little disappointed on some of those measures, meaning we said, at work, when you're a firefighter and you're living at the station for 48 hours, you cannot be within 6 feet of somebody. And if you are within 6 feet of somebody, you need to wear a mask. And then on calls, they were wearing full protective gear. Initially at first when we tried to screen patients, but then as it became more prevalent, on every call they were wearing that. And, from a standpoint of where we are now today, in my area, we've had one first responder test positive for COVID and the rest have not. And I think that speaks to everyone being very disciplined, doing the difficult job that they have to do while wearing that protective equipment. But they've been doing it right.
Absolutely. Now, there's been a lot of debate recently about the efficacy of masks to prevent the spread. What's the truth about masks and other personal protective equipment?
And this is the frustrating piece because, media can skew what people are saying, and you can take a soundbite which doesn't actually give the whole, the whole story. And I think that masks, the confusing piece is that people hear a lot of different things. Is this airborne? Is this droplet? Do cloth masks work? And really the bottom line for this is that any barrier that you put over your face when you cough or sneeze dampens that sneeze a little bit, right? So if I put my hand, my shirt, cloth mask, so you get some beneficial effect from wearing a cloth mask. What people are saying, what's confusing is a cloth mask what I should be wearing when I'm doing surgery on someone and I'm going to sneeze? No, I need a true surgical mask for that. I need something that doesn't let droplets go through that mask. And so what we're talking about here is what's the recommendation when you're out in public? Ideally, it would be everyone to have a mask on that does not let droplets go through. But because of our situation of not having enough supply of that, of hospitals having shortages of that mask, the recommendation was, well, wear a cloth mask, wear some other kind of mask. And that's where the confusion comes about. So it's not that people are lying or not telling the truth about it. It's a gradation of protection. And, we have to make do sometimes with what we have because we don't have the supplies. On my website, we actually have a video of how to make your own mask that's quite effective, and it's actually comfortable for exercising. So it does protect from droplets. So if you go to drsovndal.com, you can go to the COVID resource site, and there's a video there of how to make your own mask at home, and it's comfortable.
Wonderful. And what about this story that's been going around about the mask not allowing you to get rid of your CO2 as you exhale?
So when you look at those providers that are wearing a mask all day, that mask that those providers are wearing are different than a surgical mask. The surgical mask is the medical grade mask that goes over your face that surgeons wear when they're doing like an appendicitis. It's what you typically see. It's what I'm wearing on the cover of my book. What healthcare providers are wearing a lot of the day are their N95 masks, which are kind of snugly fit to the face, and that's what gives those dark lines that you see when they're wearing it all day. And that mask does move air back and forth, but there is a barrier there. So if you're wearing that mask for 8 hours a day, it just is a little more work of breathing to kind of get it in and out of that mask.
But generally speaking, the type of masks that you're talking about, that the fabric masks that are protective and so on and so forth, they allow for the exchange of air and carbon dioxide.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, many areas are starting phased rollouts where businesses are reopening and public contact will increase. What's your take on the possibility of spread when the quarantines are lifted?
Again, this is unfortunate that it has to be politicized, what we're trying to look at with the science. The closer you are in proximity to groups of people, the higher the likelihood of spreading a virus. And I'm going to say a virus because it's true of any virus. It's all a matter of virus load. So if I am in an open space outside distant from somebody, I have a much lower risk of catching that virus than if I'm in an elevator with a person that's sneezing. And so when we talk about opening up our economy, I'm all for opening up our economy in a very methodical and thought out way, meaning we got to be smart about this. So what I would recommend is that you still attempt to socially distance. That means you're trying to stay 6 feet away. Is that completely eliminate the risk? No, it doesn't completely eliminate the risk, but it makes it much more manageable so we can function. And then if I have to be in close proximity with other people for longer periods of time, then I wear a mask because that protects me. The other key thing is, I really wish that there was a stronger push from a public service announcements and things like that to educate people on, why are we wearing the mask? What is the risk of you catching a virus? Because people put on a mask and they touch that mask so often because they're not used to wearing a mask. And every time you touch your face, you're introducing the risk of catching the virus, because the virus is spread through my hand touching something, and then I touch my face, my nose, my eyes, or my mouth. And so I really wish people would focus in on, as we open the economy up, you need to have really good hand hygiene. We need to be washing our hands frequently, and you need to keep your hands away from your face when you're in public. That means your eye might itch a little bit. Don't itch it. You put your mask on, leave your mask on. Don't keep adjusting it or moving it to talk to people, because every time you do that, you're inducing a little bit of risk.
What about some of the recent demonstrations where the demonstrators are not practicing physical distancing or wearing masks?
I mean, I think it's unfortunate. Obviously, I think, we live in the United States. We have freedom of speech. We're able to protest, and all of those things are great things which make our country great. It is scary to me to see those large groups of people so close, and I wish it didn't come out to be, again, politicized, and that people are not telling us the truth about that we need to wear masks or not. Just from a science standpoint, the more people you put together, the more risk there is. And so from my standpoint, I wish they would protest with social distancing or masks on. That would be ideal. But, obviously this is such a, crazy time of all that we're dealing with at the same moment that it becomes hard.
There's been a lot of discussion as to whether or not people should go to an ER during the COVID-19 pandemic. What are the signs and symptoms that should never be ignored and really call for emergency medicine?
Yeah, I'll get to that question, but I just want to forefront it with, the ER and hospitals have prepared themselves now for this pandemic, meaning we've figured out ways to try to limit exposure, our process of how you check in, how many people are let in the rooms, negative pressure rooms. All these things are done to protect patients in the hospital. And, we've had a very low rate of people catching COVID in a hospital that's not overrun. So if we're not talking about these extreme situations that maybe they saw in New York City, if the hospital is kind of working at normal capacity, these protective measures are in place. And so what I want to say is, don't let the fear of getting something kill you. Meaning the fear of getting COVID should not rate up there with the fear of maybe I'm having a heart attack because I'm having chest pain. That is certainly more concerning to me, the chest pain, than the risk of you getting COVID when you check in the emergency department. So, severe conditions that you should get checked for in the emergency department, the listeners can probably rattle them off. So if you have chest pain, significant shortness of breath, severe abdominal pain, you can't stop vomiting, a terrible headache, problems with your speech or vision, all of these things that are big deals. They're a big deal when they're happening to you. Don't let the fear of COVID stop you from being evaluated, because those things could kill you or totally disable you. Absolutely great advice. And for listeners who are not aware, what's a negative pressure room? A negative pressure room means that the air in that room is being vented out. So if there were a patient in that room with, say, meningitis or a patient with COVID, it's not getting pushed out into the rest of the emergency department. It's getting pulled back up through a filter system. So it goes into a HEPA filter, out the room, and no one else is exposed. What other precautions and protocols do you have in place for people coming to the emergency room? There's things you've seen on the news. Obviously, our whole triage is different. The way the patients are, approached and brought back into the room, how they're placed in protective equipment when they're brought back. We don't allow large groups in the department, and that's caused a lot of, grief and fear for people as well. But we don't let family members come back as well, because we don't want them exposed. Again, changing the order of rooms that we use, those negative pressure rooms, all of those things contribute to us mitigating the risk of spread. So in terms of traditional triage that people might be accustomed to, where you walk in, there's usually someone, a nurse or a practitioner behind a desk who asks you what you're there for to fill out forms. How is that being handled right now? So a lot of ERs are handling it differently, but we've, expanded waiting rooms so people aren't sitting together, in a busy waiting room of an emergency department. We've opened outdoor tents to do the triage. So essentially it's more of a line style approach. You're at Disneyland, say, and you're getting in line to go on the ride. It kind of shuffles people through a certain coordinated, direction, so that they're not coming in or interfacing with each other. And the speed at which we do it, where we do the history taking, where we take your vital signs, that's all done separately, where it used to be done maybe in more of a community setting. And people who are coming in and presenting symptoms, possible symptoms of COVID, how are they handled? The process is the same because we assume everybody has COVID. So everyone's being treated the same.
And has the turnaround time to get people in and out who do not require hospitalization changed at all?
No, I think that's probably fairly similar. It depends on how busy the hospital is, but that hasn't changed much at our facility.
Now, the facility you actually serve at is where?
I'm in Boulder, Colorado.
In Boulder, Colorado, okay. How many hospitals of your nature exist in that area?
We have, in Boulder County, we have 4 hospitals.
4 hospitals. I would say major hospitals, correct?
Yeah, 4 hospitals, level, trauma centers that can handle essentially everything.
And those 4 trauma centers, are they positioned in a way that there's a fair distribution of patients?
No, with medicine nowadays, that's not always the case. It's such a business game for these big entities that they often put hospitals next to other ones just to try to gain business. My hospital sits in the middle of the city, and there's no other hospital in the city of Boulder. So we kind of, catch that whole area. But the other county hospitals, some of them are quite close to each other, maybe a few minutes.
Sounds like a really daunting amount of work and a daunting responsibility. My guest this week, Dr. Shannon Sovndal. He's the author of Fragile, Beauty in Chaos, Grace in Tragedy, and the Hope That Lives in Between. We'll be back with more of Dr. Sovndal after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose. To link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
During these times of worry, fear, and uncertainty, a calming and soothing voice may help you relax, clear your mind, and help you sleep. This is Victor the Voice Fuhrman, and for the first time, I'm offering my voice for your well-being. I will craft a personal guided meditation to suit your needs. My fees are very reasonable, and I can provide your personalized guided meditation quickly. For more information, please send an email to voice@victorthevoice.com. That's voice@victorthevoice.com. Blessings, my friend.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Dr. Shannon Sovndal. He's the author of the book Fragile, Beauty in Chaos, Grace in Tragedy, and the Hope That Lives in Between. Many families have lost partners or friends or people recently as a result of COVID-19 and related causes. This brings up the question of faith and grief. What is the challenge to one's faith when mourning the loss of a loved one?
I mean, this is an epic question, and this is really the question that I try to address in Fragile, because it's something that I've struggled with over time. And, we try to control the outcome of our life, and we want to have good things happen, but there's just no way that that's going to happen, right? As we move forward, there's going to be good and bad. And there's really, it just opens up the spectrum. And by no means does this is how I've started to think about it. And by no means does this mean that we should get over these terrible losses or grief moments easily. It is a struggle, and it's an ongoing struggle. But what I would point out is that as I've thought about this, in order for me to truly love my wife and my kids, I had to experience those bad moments. Because if I had no backdrop, if I only had the good moments, it would become dull, and it would become kind of a life that I don't want to live. If every day after day was the same, say it's a good day, but it's the same day after day, that would just become so boring. And any good epic story has its up or downs. And you need to realize that your life is going to have those ups and downs, and really just taking in the moment and what it means to you. And it points out the questions that are important. We chase so many superficial truths in our lives. I can spend my day trying to get that next job, publish the next paper, move up to the next level of house. But really, what does it come down to what's important in my life? And the way that I know that, and the way that I learn that, is through experiencing hard times and grief. And it changes my question. It changes it from, why is this happening? Why is there COVID? Why is there a pandemic? Why did my loved one die? And it redirects your question to, what is my why? What is my why often relates to who is important in my life. And that who is my wife, my kids, my friends, and the connection I feel with them came to me because I was feeling that grief.
And how do you relate that message to someone who's just lost a family member or loved one?
To someone who's just lost a loved one, I think it's very hard to relate any message, to be honest. And it's unrealistic to expect them to be able to reason that this is going to be okay, because that statement to someone who's just in loss is insulting. So really for me, people who experienced loss, and the people I'm speaking with in the ER, it's really important just to be there. And you don't necessarily even have to say anything. You just have to be there, and you have to let them experience that moment and move through it. So I don't have, a quick answer for you for that. And if you're buying Fragile because you're like, oh, he has the 3-step solution to grief resolution, it's the wrong book for you. Because what I'm trying to do is give an honest look at the struggle that we have, because good and bad things happen to us. And really, this whole working on this book has opened up my eyes to this, that, it's not a negative thing in the long run, meaning overall these terrible moments are terrible and I don't want to experience them. But they did change me, and they often change me for the better.
Well, you are a man of faith. So what's it like to believe in God and as an ER doctor witness pain and death on a daily basis?
It's a struggle. And again, if you want a good examination of this, that's what I'm trying to get into in Fragile. I think the first time I mentioned God in Fragile, I'm at a funeral, and I write that, God just really pisses me off. And that feeling of trying to come to terms with it. I was raised, in a Lutheran church, and it was very, mellow and didn't talk about things that I thought were really relevant. And it kind of left me to struggle for myself to figure out, like, if we have a God that we say is all knowing and all good, and then I'm looking at COVID-19 and genocide and suicide and PTSD, if I'm looking at all these things, God has to be responsible for that if he's all knowing and all good and all powerful. And how do I come to terms with that? And that has been, a struggle for me. And I think that I do figure that all I can say to that is, if I were in control, if you let me try to make things the way that I thought they should be to work out, they would work out terribly. They would not be, I wouldn't be in the end spot at all where I want to be. And so, there is a piece that you need to have faith, but I don't like when people say you just need to have faith that it's going to be okay, because there's no way that, God would make you inquisitive or make me want to be a doctor or love physics and then say, yeah, but don't worry about the spiritual part. I just want you to have faith. And so I think coming to terms with the examination of it and having all the emotions of, I'm mad at God, or I don't understand this, or, I can't even speak to it. all of those things are okay to have those emotions. And I think, we often try to candy coat things. My wife is great. She grew up doing mission work. She speaks Spanish because of it. And she always tells me, I need to have more faith. And I tell her that faith's not my problem. Like, I have enough faith to try to question it. And because I'm questioning it and it doesn't make sense to me, that doesn't mean that I don't have faith. And I think that we need to keep on struggling through it and trying to think through it. Every time I go into the wormhole, I come out a little different. And I come out a little bit different in my thought process about spirituality.
I had a wonderful teacher when I attended seminary in the 90s who used to say that faith without action, without works, is meaningless.
That's a good statement.
And that all the faith in the world, if we don't act upon that faith, if we don't act it, if we don't support our fellow human beings with love and compassion and whatever gifts we have, then it makes no sense.
I was going to say, it's a good, it's actually, it's kind of on that same line where people say, where do you spend your money? Where do you spend your time? That's where your value system is. And it's that same kind of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You were talking about grief and how, number one, when someone has an immediate loss, there's virtually nothing you can say to them. And one of the things that I've learned in my life personally and also through the work of chaplaincy and hospice work is that there's no right way or wrong way to grieve. We each grieve differently. What's been your experience with that?
I mean, I think that's absolutely true, and it's really, I was speaking earlier at how I felt like I wasn't being human because I was trying to protect myself from these interactions. But part of it is, and I don't know if you've had this experience when you were working as a chaplain, when that person is grieving, I am trying to read what they need at the moment. So do they need a hug or do they need me to be quiet? Do they want me to say something? Do they want me to leave the room? Do they want me to sit down with them? And you're trying to glean all this stuff, and it feels very shallow to me because I'm like, I'm feeling rushed, but I don't want them to feel that I'm rushed, right? And so I'm trying to figure out what that person needs, and everybody is different. You can always say, I think that they should act like this. I've had people, laugh because they have a nervous laugh when they get bad news. I've had people literally attempt to tackle me. And so, you have this whole range of how people are going to respond, and there isn't a right or wrong answer. And again, that's why I say, what is the solution for me as a doctor? I'm trying to give them what they need, and I'm trying to read what they need. And sometimes it's just to be present. It's just to be there and sit. So, you got to read the situation, and everybody is different.
As you mentioned, the gift of presence, we call it creating sacred space in chaplaincy, and also being willing to listen without having to say or insinuate your own opinions and impressions.
Yeah, I think that's key too. We want to fix, and doctors want to fix. And if a patient's complaining, why is this happening? Why, and they're crying, and they don't need an answer, right? They just need you to let them get that emotion out. And so, understanding that it is the space that you're creating and a wall to let it bounce off of.
Absolutely. I recently interviewed a friend of mine who's part of what they call the hug mobsters, people who go around and set up these spontaneous things where they just hug people. They ask for permission, of course, first, and they hug people. In the time of COVID, when we're not supposed to be making physical contact or hugging, what do you suggest? I
mean, this is such a hard thing with COVID, right? We say you need to socially distance. And socially distancing is hard because really what you need is you need to commune with your friends and you need to feel connected. I need to go to jiu-jitsu and I can't go, right? And so you have to figure out other ways. We had a wedding anniversary and a birthday that we did last week, where we did it with Zoom and everyone, did the cheers at the same time. Now that it's opening up a little bit, you can get out with people. You can be close to people, meaning, keeping your social distancing 6 feet and sitting outside on a patio and talking. But I do think that it's important to get that interaction as soon as possible because we need it.
Your book is entitled Fragile. Life is fragile. Why is it essential for all of us, especially now, to slow down and open our eyes to everything that life has to offer?
Yeah, when I wrote this book, I started 8 years ago, and when we start to release this book about 9 months ago. And so there's no way that that this is going to be released during a pandemic. And the message that I was giving was, life is fragile. At any moment, you can be in a car accident, you can have a heart attack, all of these terrible things can happen, and it can happen in a moment. But now it's so hit home for all of us because it's not just the other person, and it's not just our community or the United States. It is literally the world that is dealing with this. The reality that we had 3 months ago is now different today, and that's for all of us. And it just proves that, life being fragile, it does change, and it's going to continue to change over time. As we move forward, you have to say, hey, how do I live in the moment? Because I don't know what tomorrow brings.
Absolutely. What universal truths have you learned about spirituality and the human condition as an ER doctor, and how may we apply these truths at this time?
I would just really emphasize kind of what I was saying, in the last question, is that take a moment to appreciate what you have. Take a moment to be grateful every day. And those moments that feel so rushed because you have put all these criteria on yourself of what you need to get done, really focus in on what is important and make sure you're giving time to that thing that is important. I mean, I can't tell you how much I enjoy watching a sunrise or going and looking at the moon or having a great piece of Doublemint gum, right? Like all these little things that you have in life, we let kind of pass by fleeting quickly, and really to acknowledge that these things are good and we get to experience them.
His name is Dr. Shannon Sovndal. He's the author of Fragile, Beauty in Chaos, Grace in Tragedy, and the Hope That Lives in Between. Please tell us one more time how listeners can get your book and find out more about you and your wonderful work.
Yeah, I would love for you to go to my website. It's drsovndal.com. That's DRSOVNDAL.com. I would love to hear comments or questions. If you read the book, let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you.
Dr. Sovndal, thank you so much for your service and your message. I think it's so important at this time.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.